It is amazing to me how stupid people are. And I don't just mean stupid, I mean stupid and ignorant. And what I say about that is very simple in terms people understand. They think that everything that Donald Trump is doing, they're happy. They're finally saying, finally he's taking action. Finally, a president that is keeping his promises and is doing exactly what he said he would do. And that's all very well and good. And that's all very well and good. But what you don't realize is that what he's doing affects every single American. And you don't see it yet, but you will. You may be happy that he's doing this because you don't realize the effect it's going to have on you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in a month from now, you're going to see that everything he's not doing for you, and he's not doing for your grandma or your mom. He's doing it for him. He can't take away funding that's already been appropriated by Congress. That is a law. Once Congress appropriated that money for these programs that actually we do pay for with our tax dollars, so once Congress appropriates this money for these programs, it is a law and nobody can take it away. And if you're a president, you should know this, right? Even if you don't like it, there's likely ways to go about revising it or changing it or taking it away altogether. But to just blatantly take it away and give absolutely no explanation as to why, that's just cruel. And everything and there's a chain reaction of a domino effect that happens there because you take the funding away, these programs like Meals on Wheels is no longer sustainable. Because if Meals on Wheels isn't getting their funding from the federal government, who's going to support them? If you're ripping away everyone's medical insurance, and by the way, that was a cruel, sneaky way to get rid of Obamacare, by just ripping everything away and taking away everyone's insurance, which means you basically are going to kill people, because people are relying on their insulin for diabetics, people are relying on their medication. I know for sure my mom needs medication. And if they take away the funding, how is she getting it? And if you don't take your insulin for diabetics, you can die because you'll go into shock. If a nursing home no longer gets their money, then how are they going to pay for the patients? How are they going to provide food? How are they going to provide comfort? How are they going to provide, medical care? Everything has a reason why it exists. Donald Trump was quoted earlier today. I happen to have quoted it because I was testing something out, and Hyper says, "Why do we need Social Security and why do we need Medicaid?" I think that is the most stupidest question you can get asked by a president of the United States. Why do we need Social Security? And why do we need Medicaid? Well, if we don't need Medicaid, then why do you need Medicare? If you don't need Medicare, why do we need Blue Cross Blue Shield? If you don't need Blue Cross Blue Shield, why do you need medical insurance? Why don't we just do what Canada does and other countries do, which is free healthcare for all? Social Security is needed because those are disability checks that come every month for people who can't work. Medicaid is Medicaid is medical insurance that's provided by the states, that's funded by the government, that's funded by the federal government. Medicare is for senior citizens. Blue Cross Blue Shield is privately owned, but they get their funding from the government. Do you see how everything here relates? If you chop one, then the other one goes too. And then the other one, and the other one. They're all related. Because if you don't get your funding from Meals on Wheels or the hospitals, then you don't have a payroll either. Because when you make a budget, your budget gets submitted. And based on that budget, that's how much you get allocated to spend. That is how Congress works. So if you cut the program, the money's got to come from somewhere, right? How are you going to pay your employees? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to supply care for the patients? If there's no Meals on Wheels, how are you going to give people the foods they need? I know I had to benefit from it once, but not for reasons you think. There's chaos. And I got to say, Donald Trump doesn't have a plan. He doesn't. And that's why he's causing chaos. And he loves the chaos. Because Donald Trump is a narcissist and he enjoys the chaos. And he decided because he's the president, he doesn't have to explain his actions and he can do it. Newsflash, yes you do. Because Donald Trump, you want to move a program, fine. But do it the right way. Do it the legal way. Notify Congress first. It's the same thing with his firing the inspector generals. He needs to give Congress 30 days notice that he's going to do it and say why. So these inspector generals who are refusing to leave until it's done properly, they're right. But it's pissing Donald Trump off. Because you have to tell Congress 30 days in advance that you're going to fire the inspector generals. Otherwise, you're just breaking the law. And Donald Trump doesn't believe in the law. He says he's for law and order. But if you're for law and order, then pardoning every single January 6th jailer defeats that purpose. You can't be for law and order, but only when it's convenient for you. You can't have freedom of speech only when it's convenient for you. If you're for law and order, then the January 6th people would still be in prison. But Donald Trump doesn't think they're guilty. He thinks they are political prisoners or hostages. You know who were hostages? The people on October 7th in Israel were hostages. These are people who did nothing but enjoy a good time at a party, and they were taken hostage. These are people who were taken hostage simply because they were Jewish. Simply because they are Jewish, Simply because they are Jewish. That's the only reason. Those are hostages. January 6th were never hostages nor political prisoners. You know what a political prisoner is? Someone who's taken prisoner for political reasons. That's what you call a political prisoner. A hostage is someone who's being taken against their will. That is the difference. So to call January 6th people hostages is an insult to the Jews who were taken hostage on October 7th. And as a Jewish person, I get offended at that. Because January 6th, they're not hostages. They're not political prisoners. You call them what they are. Criminals. And in fact, I had this conversation with somebody this morning when they said to me, they aren't criminals. And I said, if they're not criminals, what do you call them? He couldn't answer me. And I said, if they're not criminals, then who the heck did they build those gallows for, if not for the vice president? He couldn't answer me. He couldn't answer me because there is no answer. Because he knows because he knows I call them out, and he knows that he doesn't have one. And if they're not criminals, then why were they in jail? Criminals don't go to jail. Criminals don't go to trial. So if they're not criminals, and if you're political prisoners, you certainly don't go to a trial. And hostages don't have a trial. And at least hostages, you know they're being held because there's usually a ransom involved. So you can't tell me that they're not criminals. Because if they're not criminals, what are they? And the truth of the matter is, you can rewrite January 6th. You can whitewash January 6th. And you can say that both never happened. But you'd be lying. Because history doesn't lie. You can try to rewrite it as many times as you want. Yes, it's true. Donald Trump was impeached twice. No, the trial was a sham. No, it wasn't. The jury was picked by Biden supporters, and that's why they convicted him. No, they weren't. They were a jury of his peers, and Trump's lawyers got to pick the jury, because that's what lawyers do. They choose who's on the jury. If you're going to have an argument, at least be able to back it up. If you think they're not criminals, tell me, why don't you think they're criminals? Don't just walk away from the conversation saying, because then it just makes you look stupid. If they're not criminals, then why'd they try to hang Mike Pence? Why'd they keep screaming, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence? If they're not criminals. Do you see where I'm going with this? You could say whatever you want, but video footage doesn't lie, and neither does history. This is exactly why innocent people die. This is exactly why we had not the rise of Nazi Germany, because Hitler was a master manipulator, and people listened to him, and he said everything that they were thinking, and then some. Nobody knows why he hated the Jews. Well, at least I don't know the reason. Maybe there's a reason. I have no idea what the reason is, but I'm not going to speculate. But nobody knows why he blamed the Jews. Nobody knows why he wanted to kill them. Nobody knows why he did what he did. But he did it. And everything he did left a lasting impression. 80 years later, you now have neo-Nazis, white supremacy, all of these. And Donald Trump isn't really helping that. Donald Trump's actually making it worse by having all these people who are hidden for all these years suddenly coming into the limelight saying, it's okay. It's okay. We'll go to jail and Donald Trump will pardon us. That's okay. Let's do it. You have a guy like Stuart Rhodes from the Oath Keepers. A judge decided that he's reversing the order and allowing him to go to the Capitol. Do you understand this? He's going back to the Capitol to do who knows what. Is he going to Is he going to do more reconnaissance on the Capitol and attack it again? Is he going to meet his hero, Donald Trump? As far as I'm concerned, these are criminals. You could say whatever you want. You could say J6 never happened. You could say we're being lied to about it. You can say that it was just a walk in the park. You could say it was a plot by George Soros and the FBI. That's all great. And if you show me proof, I'll say thank you for showing me the proof. If you can show me the proof that J6 never happened, that it was just a walk in the park, that it was being funded by the FBI or Soros or Democrats, If you can show me proof, I'll retract everything I ever said about it. And until you can show me the proof, don't tell me anything. Because you say the evidence of January 6th was destroyed. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. If if this training destroyed the evidence and she should be tried for it, then what the hell is Barnes & Noble selling? What did I download to my phone if it doesn't exist? If there's no evidence? What the hell did Cassidy Hutchinson write if there's no evidence? Do you honestly think that the January 6th committee, honest Democrat committee members, would take federal papers and rip them up and throw them to hide the evidence? Wouldn't that defeat the goal of what they were trying to do? Wouldn't that defeat the purpose? And then you show them the facts. And they're like, it's wrong. So why is it if you show me facts that Donald Trump is doing, and I tell you it's wrong, and you say, no, it's not? And I said with January 6th, I said they're criminals, and that's not me talking, that's the Constitution talking. And if you want to argue with the Constitution, by all means, you can do that. But I'm pretty sure it says in the Constitution, sedition is considered a form of treason, and you can be tried and hung for that. I'm pretty sure that's in the Constitution. Now, I could be wrong, but silly me, what do I know about the Constitution? I'm only an American citizen for 45 years, so, apparently MAGA people know better than me, so what do I know? And that's the point. People were warned about people were warning others by saying, if Donald Trump says he's going to do what he says he's going to do if he's president, you should take him at his word. And people said, oh, it's just talk, he's not going to do anything, because Sleepy Joe did nothing. And here we are. People said and you remember, Donald Trump said he had nothing to do with Project 25. He knew nothing about it. He knew nothing about it, and he's not involved in it. I hate to burst people's bubbles here, but he knew damn well what it was. He knew everything about Project 25, and yes, he was involved in it. It's 925-page manifest, and he wants to make it the new Constitution of the United States. That is what he's trying to do, and he's already done at least 7 of those. He took away civil rights from people. He's taking away DEI. And people don't know the severity of this. And I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. It was a very peaceful conversation about DEI. And I said very clearly, until Donald Trump came into the picture, I had no idea what DEI was. I had never heard of it before. And I bet you 99% of the population had no idea what DEI actually was. But Donald Trump said what it was. And all of a sudden, people hate it, and people don't like it, and people don't want it. Because they are brainwashed into thinking that. Because how can you not... Because if you don't know what something is, and suddenly somebody tells you, this is what it is, and it's bad, and suddenly you say, oh, is that now? All right, I guess we got to get rid of it. But how is it you never knew about it, and suddenly Donald Trump tells you about it, and suddenly you know everything there is to know about it, and because the bad man says it's bad, and we gotta get rid of it. Facts matter, ladies and gentlemen, and so do... Facts matter. And so does an education. DEI is very simply diversity, equality, integrity. 3 things this country... It's basically affirmative action. It's basically what it is. And Rosa Parks is responsible for that. Because had she not sat on that bus and had she moved, who knows who we would be today. Because Governor George Wallace said, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And he was and that statement alone tells you that he was a huge racist. And as you see, segregation is the way of the dodo bird. If Donald Trump is trying to bring it back, I wish him good luck. Because DEI is not a bad thing. What's wrong with diversity? What's wrong with equality? And what's wrong with integrity? And I get it. You know, when you go to a job and you get an application that says we are an equal opportunity employer, we do not discriminate against race, religion, creed, identity, and all that stuff. And you know how if you can't work because of your religion or something, you need to get a letter to prove that? Well, here's a wake-up call for everybody. With DEI gone, that's no longer necessary. An employer can now fire you for any reason whatsoever. You're Jewish? Goodbye. You're black? I don't like blacks. Get the hell out of here. You're Muslim? Oh, you're a terrorist. Get out of here. Oh, you're a woman? Your place is in the kitchen. Goodbye. That's essentially what an employer can do now. Because they're not an equal opportunity anymore. And they're not inclined to uphold that because there's no such law anymore. And so if you bring a letter from a rabbi or a priest, the employer can say, okay, but I only want white people here. And I want white people who can work. And that's what DEI basically is. So when you have the Los Angeles fires, and you're saying that the chief of police is a DEI lesbian, I don't know what that means. What does that mean? She's a DEI lesbian. She's a DEI hire. What does that mean? Are you saying that because she's a lesbian, she can't do her work? Are you writing that DEI equals guy? Which I think, by the way, is very disgusting and cruel. What you're basically saying is because she's a lesbian firefighter, and she said she can't lift up men, or she can't lift people up, are you saying because she's a lesbian and so she's not strong? Are you saying that the lesbians caused the fires? Which, if they can, please let me know how a lesbian can cause a fire. I'd like to know how this is possible, because it's the same thing with the woke. Woke is a word that's been around for many years. And nobody ever heard, and again, until Donald Trump mentioned these words, or these right-winger nutjobs mentioned these words, I never heard the word DEI. I never even heard the word woke. I never even heard of these words. All of a sudden, these people come out of the woodworks and say, this woke ideology is bad. We have to get rid of it. How can you get rid of something? How can you say it's bad if you don't even know what it means? Now, I'm not saying I know what it means, and I don't think it really matters. I do know it's in the dictionary, but how can you say you don't like something if you have no idea what it means? I'll repeat this. 95% of the population had no idea what DEI actually meant. Nobody, including myself, didn't know what DEI means. Donald Trump finally comes in and says, or maybe even some right-wingers had said it, and Donald Trump picked up on it and said about DEI is bad. And so all of a sudden, everybody doesn't like it, and says, okay, we got to get rid of it. You never heard of it, but suddenly some Yahoo comes up and says it's bad. And so you're saying, great. This is what brainwashing does to you. They make you can no longer think for yourself, and you no longer have the freedoms, because you're now having somebody think for you. Then now you have somebody telling you now what to think, what to breathe, what to say. And instead of asking the right question, which is, what is DEI and how come I never heard of it before, you're just going by somebody saying, this is bad and it's evil, so we got to get rid of it. And you're like, okay. That's when somebody says the woke ideology, it's bad and it's being taken over by the left, by the left, you never heard of it. The right thing to say is, well, what is it exactly? How come I never heard of it before? You know why? Because you're in a cult. And a cult, and when you go to a cult, you're indoctrined and brainwashed. And they tell you what to think, what to believe. So if they tell you it's bad, it's bad. If they tell you it's good, it's good. No matter how nonsensical it may be. And when you're in a cult, it's easy to manipulate because they've already trapped you. You're the army that they want. And that's why I always say it's important to have the facts before anything. I'm not saying a lot of things here in this podcast because I don't know. And I'm not going to try to guess what I don't know. But I had to learn a lot of things lately. Okay? It's important to ask, what is DEI and why is it so important? What is the woke ideology and why do people hate it? These are conversations we need to have. Not getting attacked because we're calling people out. Not being cursed out because we don't agree with the policies of Donald Trump. Because that's not who we are. If Donald Trump wants to be a king, which is what he's trying to do anyway, he's trying to seize power by bypassing Congress and bypassing the law. He's trying to seize power, make himself the all-powerful king, which will never happen. If somebody wakes up and has some balls and says, you're way out of line. But nobody wants to have these conversations. People are afraid. But I'm not. As Jim Acosta said, don't believe the hype and don't get in, and don't read into the fear. Facts are important. Words are important. Education is important. Imagine everything gets stripped away. Imagine Donald Trump stopped all medical research. Imagine that. Years of research for cancer. Years of research to find a cure for cancer or for AIDS. Imagine it. And in 1 second, he tells everybody, stop. I'm not giving you the funding anymore. Pulling us out of WHO is going to be a disaster in the making. We already went through one pandemic. Who's to say that the next one won't be worse than COVID? Who's to say that? You take away WHO, who's monitoring the diseases from all over the world? Who's monitoring the pandemics in the world to make sure it doesn't come here? We were lucky that COVID didn't wipe us out. But the next pandemic, we may not be so lucky. Because who's to say the next pandemic won't be worse than what was COVID? Going back to what I said about the chaos. When you don't have a plan, that's what happens. When you're making executive orders and making it up as you go along, there's chaos. And yesterday, when Donald Trump just did that, revoked everything, there was chaos and confusion. Nobody knew what was what, and nobody was going to happen. You want to cut a program? Okay. If it's too expensive and you need to cut it, well, first find out, is it really a necessity? And if it is a necessity, is there a way to save it, even if we cut the budget in half? That's what you do. That is the right thing to do, and you have a plan of action. Or you have something to replace it. You want to cut something? I get it. Things are too expensive, you need to get rid of it. But at least give notice to people. If I get a letter in the mail saying, Dear Mr. So-and-so, as of February 18th, we are going to require you to do two-factor authorization for security. This is to protect you. Or as of March 1st, we are no longer going to be dealing with this insurance. We are no longer going to be providing this anymore. And you've already told me, you've already sent me the letter, and you've already informed me that in 2 months' time, which means you give me the chance to make alternate arrangements. You give me the chance to find a new company. You give me the chance to find a backup. Because that's the right thing to do. I'm going to say this because I want to and because it's important. But without clear guidance, there's chaos. Without clear guidance, people will be confused. Without communication, you're going to get into fights. You're going to get into battles. And without clarifying, you're just going to keep assuming based on what was implied or based on what was said earlier. People are not commodities. People are people. And when you start taking away things from them that they need, you're essentially telling them to go fuck themselves, and you're essentially going to kill them. Because if you take away a necessity that they need to survive, and suddenly they don't have it anymore, and they can't get it anywhere else, you're basically saying to them is, you're old anyway, so who cares if you die? Right? No, it doesn't work that way, my friends. When all these programs were created, whenever they were created, food stamps, Medicaid, Social Security, whenever these programs got created, there were reasons behind them. They didn't just one day wake up and say, hey, let's give out disability checks. There were reasons behind, let's just give people free money to buy food. No, there were discussions behind it. What led to them, I don't know. But there were discussions. And it was voted on in Congress, the Senate. That was discussed. And here we are. Why can't Donald Trump do that? You can't just throw someone into the water. You can't just hire somebody at a job and expect them to know what to do. You can't put somebody into a job, like say a warehouse job, tell them to go ride the forklift and expect them to know how to drive that forklift and expect them to know how to operate the forklift. You can't expect that, because then if something happens, they're going to say, well, if you don't know how to drive the forklift, why did you do it? Because you told me to, and you didn't want to, and I tried to tell you I didn't know how to do it, but your bottom line was more important, and now it's going to cost you. That's right. You can't expect somebody to go in there and be okay with it and not know what to do. And so I say this, and I say this with love. If you want to be right, be right. If you want to be wrong, you can be wrong. But there's no reason for you to attack somebody because they don't agree with you. And there's no reason why you need to curse somebody out because you don't agree with them. And if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. We can have conversations like adults and agree to disagree, like I did with a friend of mine. And if I'm going to call you out, understand why I'm calling you out and take it like a man. But if I'm wrong, I want you to call me out and tell me that I'm wrong. And tell me why I'm wrong. And I will say thank you. And if I am wrong, I'll take it like a man. But when you get defensive, or you start to deflect, I've already proven my point. Because if I say a comment and you start deflecting by talking about something else that wasn't even part of the conversation, that means you're deflecting and you don't want to be called out on it. But let me be clear. The White House administration is going to continue to do this. We're not even in the first 100 days. We're still in the first 100 days of this presidency. And who knows what else he can do that he hasn't done yet. Project 2025 is a 928 manifesto written by the guy who's waiting to be confirmed, the head of that office, the OMB. And if he's confirmed, there's no telling what may happen. But if the entire 928 pages of the Project 2025 comes to fruition, then everything we fought for, our freedom, our Constitution is gone. And the only Constitution we have will be the Project 2025, which basically is telling us that we all have to be loyal to one man and one man only. And if we're not, we're going to be charged with treason. Do you want that? Because I sure as hell don't.